Good morning, my friends. We are continuing our roadmap for right living based on affirmations for self-healing, the 52 qualities listed here. So today is Monday, and it's the day that I remind you all that this work is made possible by your wonderful and generous support. So let's start with a prayer. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, Friend, Beloved God, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Sri Yukteswar, Beloved Master Paramahansa Yogananda, Saints of all religions, dear friend and guide Swami Kriyananda, humbly we bow to you all. Help us to feel your living presence within, to never forget that we are not alone in this world, but are acting as your channels. Help us to rise to that noble destiny, that we may serve others as your emissary of light, love, and infinite joy. Om, peace. Amen. I was saying that this is this work, which I call the mission of the Masters, to bring these teachings to as many people as are open to receiving them, is supported by your wonderful generosity, which you can express by signing up on Patreon website, which connects creative people with people with the inspiration to help them, and also directly through PayPal. We are a registered charity now with PayPal. Your donations through PayPal are tax exempt. They'll send you a receipt. Through Patreon, it isn't. So if that tax status is important to you, you can look up Mission of the Masters at gmail.com, and PayPal will process it for you. And it is a great joy to serve this work with all your support. So we are on the quality of sharing, which is the fifth of the 52 qualities in this book. So you can see we're going to be at this for a while. And we have covered Swami's wonderful description of what sharing means. And so today I want to talk about the affirmation and the prayer that Swami gives for each one of these. This is a wonderful tool, this whole book. We use it as a part of our Sunday service, which is a very dynamic, it's a dynamic addition to that ceremony every week. And of course you can use it on your own, because what Swamiji gives us is he describes in just a few paragraphs, but with incredible insight, the nature of the quality that he's trying to present to us. And then he gives us an affirmation that we can use on our own to help us develop whatever this quality is, and then a prayer to go with it. A prayer is for the grace to be able to learn to express and develop this in our own lives. So the affirmation for sharing is, what I give to others, I give not away, for in my larger reality it remains ever mine. I am happy in the happiness of all. What I give to others, I give not away, for in my larger reality it remains ever mine. I am happy in the happiness of all. The whole thing about sharing, which has been very interesting, the way Swami has expressed it in the text and the way he puts it in the affirmation. People's hesitance to share is the feeling that resources are limited, and if I give away too much of what I have, then I will be somehow deprived. If I give away too much of my time, if I give away my possessions, if I give away my money, even if I give away my love and my affection, that somehow I have to hoard a certain amount, or else something bad will happen to me. And the entire discussion that Swami's offering us about sharing is that the more you share, the happier you become. One of the wonderful phrases which I emphasized in going through the text, people who gladly share with others feel themselves bathed by a constant inner stream of happiness. This seems to contradict the common sense idea that resources are limited and that what I possess feeds and strengthens me, but if you have it, then suddenly I'm not fed and strengthened. So the affirmation here is designed to change our basic way of thinking about this. We are part of a greater reality. If one has to describe in just a few words sort of what is the essence of the path of self-realization, as Swamiji has expressed it for Ananda, we are part of a greater reality. And you see, that very fundamental thought just contradicts our common sense experience of the world. We feel separate. We feel defined by our ego boundaries. What is mine, and what's yours is yours. And what this affirmation, more than many, it's trying to change our fundamental way of thinking about it, because it's our confusion of thought. It's especially obvious in this affirmation, that it's our confusion of thought that causes us to hoard into fear. Now, I will put in the simple thought which Master gave to Swamiji, and which is an important principle of Ananda. We have to be practical in our idealism. And what that means is we cannot act beyond our actual experience. We cannot act beyond our actual foundation of faith. Merely because someone says something is true, and this is a subtle point of right living, but right living is what we're talking about, which is you have to have the magnetism to make these truths your own. You can't just have it be a sort of intellectual idea. Someone said it's true, so it must be true. I'll give away all my clothes, all my money, I'll give away my house. If we don't have the magnetism to attract the freedom and happiness that kind of renunciation can bring, instead of drawing us closer to our divine goal, it separates us. It's an act of lack of common sense, and it's also, on a certain level, an act of egoism rather than renunciation, because we are imagining ourselves capable beyond what we have earned from our own self-effort at self-transformation. So, what I give to others, I give not away. So we start with that simple thought. I'm handing it to you, but there's no deprivation in it, because for in my larger reality, it remains ever mine. I had some house guests over the weekend, and on several occasions, because they're very generous people also, I wanted to give them something, and they didn't want me to give it to them. Finally, I became annoyed. I mean, mock annoyance. But I'm trying to be unselfish. Let me be unselfish. Don't just write down where you can order for yourself what I just want to give you. Let me give it to you. You're not being fair to me by not letting me give it to you. And the desire to do that and the freedom that comes from doing that, is based on what I give to others, I give not away, because you're the same as me. And in my larger reality, I possess it still. Is that how he said it? It remains ever mine. Isn't that wonderful to contemplate? Just because you're wearing it, you're eating it, you're buying something with the money I gave you, does that mean that I don't have it anymore? And the other part of this, which is a very important principle, which is our resources actually limited. And in other sections of these 52 qualities, this roadmap for right living, we talk about, I think there's abundance, and I mean, just think there's abundance perhaps in financial success. There's some things about money directly. Generosity will come up later. Non-attachment, let's see what else. I was looking about, we have success. I was just wondering actually generosity, if we actually have about wealth and money. I don't think we have it directly, but we might. I think it's touched on in various places. Work, security. We will also have it in security. And we had it somewhat in energy. You know, it's very interesting. I live in Silicon Valley, and I've lived here for more than 30 years. And we've built a very nice work here with a school and a church and a community and so on. Not all of it is totally financially secure, but much of it is. And fundraising in this particular area is not difficult. And and the obvious reason why it's not difficult is that, relatively speaking, it's a wealthy area. But the other reason that it's not difficult is because people understand money as a flow of energy. It's an area in which wealth has been generated by the creative hard work of individuals. And therefore, as a collective culture, even if you're not actually wealthy or part of that culture directly, it's sort of like it's in the water and it's in the air. People recognize that energy itself is what creates wealth. And so money is not a fixed commodity. Money is the result of the energy that you put out. And if you put out energy to magnetize it, you can put out more energy to magnetize it later. So people are very, very generous. They're generous because they have a sense of money as a flow. Swami has tried many times to explain that to us, money as a flow. And I myself, in these very broadcasts, I gave a whole series of classes on his book called Money Magnetism. And I've given a whole series of many more classes on his course, Material Success and Happiness Through Yogic Principles. That one is an audio course, and you have to find it through Ananda Palo Alto. But it's a very good course. And it's the practical explanation of how, when I give something away, it remains with me forever because I am a part of a greater reality. And it directly addresses, in a very practical way, the insecurity people feel, which causes us to hold on to the little that we have. Just, this is all I have, I'm afraid to give it away. So what I give to others, I give not away, for it in my larger reality, it remains ever mine. This affirmation will work much more powerfully if we have the philosophical understanding and the meditative experience of being part of that greater reality. One can merely affirm it, and the constant repetition of those words will awaken us to the experience, but it also is much more powerful if we already know I am one with all that is. And then we work against, what the affirmation does, it works to reprogram the subconscious. So when the subconscious says, wait, what about me? No, it says, what I give to others, I give not away. In my larger reality remains ever mine. So why would I not hand this over to myself? This is, again, where I started on this particular one, where Master, in Whispers from Eternity, his prayer is, may I spend for others as joyously and freely as I spend for myself, because I am one with all that is. And then it says, I am happy in the happiness of all. Such a simple statement, isn't it? If you're happy, that makes me happy. If you're having this makes you happy, that's the same as me. Now, I mean, people feel the suffering of others. We look across the world and we see people horrifically tortured by circumstances of war and famine and horrible things that go on in this planet. And we have this abstract desire to help them. But it's also true, right? In our own home, in our own community. I am happy in the happiness of others. How can I help others to be happy? Sharing is one thing, and we're talking about sharing of material things. But the other thing that we can share is we can share love. We can share understanding. We can share respect. We can share knowledge if it's welcome. This has been my whole life for decades. And this was the life I desperately wanted that Swami Kriyananda gave to me. I met him when I was 22, and all through my life, up until that point, I had this profound desire to help people, to do something meaningful that would benefit the world, but I didn't know what it could be. I just didn't know. And it never occurred to me that I could acquire wealth. I was never interested in acquiring wealth, so I couldn't think of it in terms of I'll get lots of money and I'll help people with money. I wanted to help people with truth and with wisdom. But the problem was, of course, I had neither truth nor wisdom, but I knew it was out there somewhere. And it's just like, when one looks back, especially from the perspective of my age, and see how all the pieces come together. And then Swamiji was standing there in front of me, and he was there entirely to share what he had learned from his guru, Paramahansa Yogananda. And he was standing in front of this room full of people. He was there for one reason, and that reason was to tell us what Master had told him, because of Swami's deep desire to offer to people something that would change their lives in a positive way, and his profound conviction, based on many years of experience even then, that this way of living, this way of understanding life would change their lives for the better. And that comes to, I am happy in the happiness of all. So when we say this over and over again, what I give to others, I give not away, for in my larger reality, it remains ever mine. So rather than become impoverished by giving of my time, my energy, my talent, my possessions, I become enriched by it. Because the more I give it away, the more I have. And then just so simply, I am happy in the happiness of all. What could be easier to understand than that? So we say it over and over again, I am happy in the happiness of all. I don't have to hoard happiness and try to gather it for myself. I try to bring happiness to everyone around me, and that's where my happiness comes from. People who gladly share with others feel themselves bathed by a constant inner stream of happiness. And then we come to the prayer. And the prayer is just the same as the affirmation. O infinite giver, teach me to find happiness through others. So now we're just putting ourselves on the mercy of the Lord, because this is always the way he puts an affirmation in a prayer. Sometimes the words are more separate than they are in this particular case. Swami is teaching us both sides of the spiritual path, which is self-effort and surrender. Self-effort and grace. I've been giving another couple of classes on that very subject, self-effort versus self-surrender. And there's this wonderful subtlety that one just discovers if you're fortunate enough to embark on a spiritual path that is a devotional path. And it's the devotional part of it that brings this. And because there's a lot of spiritual teaching that is all about the techniques I get, the practices I do, the way I can focus my energy and concentrate, which heaven knows, Master's path of self-realization is filled with that. We start our days with energization exercises where we use our willpower to draw the energy of the universe into ourselves so that we can be powerful physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. The whole path, Master's path, is all about energy. And we generate that energy by the use of our concentrated willpower. But what we do with that energy, and this is the right word, the grace to practice the teachings, is not something that comes from our egoic self-identity. So what changes us is this inflow of divine energy. Swamiji talked about when he was a young monk and he was working very hard, especially to develop humility, because he felt that his intellectuality had made him proud in ways that he did not find desirable anymore. And so he was working very hard to change himself, and let's see how he would say it. And he thought his self-effort was bringing a lot of fruit. And then Master saw him and remarked to someone else, and the remark was carried to Swami. Master called Swamiji Walter, which was Swami's last name, his American name was Walters, and for some reason Master called him Walter, and that was just what he called him. But Master looked and saw Swamiji somewhat at a distance and said to his companion, "Look how I have changed Walter." And the Guru says, "How I have changed Walter." And Walter, Swamiji, thought that he'd been working so hard and doing everything to change himself, and Master took the credit for it. Now, if you want to be cynical, you can reject Master's statement. But if you want to be honest about your own experience, if you follow a path like this one, you gradually begin to realize that transformation comes into us from a source much greater than ourselves. And the balance of self-effort and grace is that we align ourselves vibrationally, and we make ourselves receptive by our right practices. But what actually finally turns us into someone else is when we have aligned ourselves. Attunement is the word that we use. When we have attuned ourselves with the Guru's consciousness, with the presence of the divine within us, then all of a sudden we find ourselves transformed. And there's no other words for it. That's just how you feel. And it's not sentiment or romanticism when you say it. You just know that I'm different. But it wasn't I who made me different. It was the practices that I did that enabled that difference to come to me. But when it comes to me, it's the grace of God, and there's simply no other word for it. So Swamiji also poetically, because the divine manifests all the qualities that we ourselves strive to have, all of this roadmap, these are all divine qualities. They're qualities of our greater reality. So in this one, Swami calls God the infinite giver, which is sort of a fun way to think about it. And another way we talk about it philosophically is we live by the grace of God. I was talking to some friends over the weekend about biology, and someone was raising the fact that, there's about the millions and trillions of processes that are going on in our body at all times. How the cells, individual cells, are operating, and just all the things that happen all the time to keep this body going. Even the conception of a child, the growth of the child in the womb, the birth, the inevitability of the development of that body, and it will grow up. It's all utterly miraculous. There's no other way to put it. And all that physical growth is just symbolic of the spiritual expansion that can go on within us. And the more we cooperate with the way it actually works, and that cooperation is devotion. That cooperation is a relationship. When I used to teach the beginning meditation courses, which I did for many years, I had a very broad outline that I followed, but one of the focuses that I would offer after maybe about the third week or the second week, meditation is a relationship. People think that meditation is turning in upon yourself and concentrating in these certain ways. That's not at all true. It's withdrawing our energy inward, concentrating inwardly, but then it's elevating that energy and receptivity. When we raise our energy to the spiritual eye, which is the way we're taught to meditate in the Kriya Yoga path, we are lifting our sense of self above the confining reality of the body and the ego. And when we lift our self-identity above that, we meet the greater reality. This idea that, in our greater reality, this is not just attractive poetry. This is actually experienced truth. We just feel ourselves to be part of this greater reality. And when we look around at the animate and the inanimate world, we sense and we feel that we are part of all that is. And we also sense and we feel that there is a benign, loving consciousness, that it's a living consciousness, and it's not an abstraction, it's personal. That's why we think about the Guru, that's why we call God the Divine Mother. What could be more personal than your relationship with your mother? And the human mother is the symbol of the Divine Mother. And the Divine Mother is this intimate vibration of comfort and of unconditional love, the infinite giver. That's what we all long for. That's why there's so much happiness in giving to others, because we experience in the giving to others the joy of giving, which becomes the same as receiving, because we are on both sides of the equation. What I give to others, I give not away, for in my larger self it remains always with me. So the prayer that we offer is so simple. O infinite giver, teach me to find happiness through others. It's sweet, isn't it? Because even in the giving, we recognize a greater reality than ourselves. So the very fact that we pray to be able to be generous and dynamic in our sharing is an affirmation that we are part of the greater reality. So let us practice both the affirmation and this prayer, until the spirit of sharing becomes our self-definition. What I give to others, I give not away, for in my larger reality it remains ever mine. I am happy in the happiness of all. And then we pray, O infinite giver, teach me to find happiness through others. God bless you, my friend.